Okay, we're back. I think we're back, right? Everybody is here. Welcome back. Sorry for the delay. We are so excited to be back. I am so excited to be here with Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. And I'm probably not the first person to describe Gary as a content making machine. So many years ago, Gary saw the early potential of YouTube and he launched a very funny and irreverent show about wine, which gained a huge following and sparked dozens of other ventures. We are not even going to be able to hear a fraction of his life story tonight. But the good news is later this summer, we have a full studio interview with Gary on the podcast that will be released. We've already done the interview. We're producing it now. It's an amazing story, and Gary's life story is so interesting, and I can't wait to put it on. Tonight, we're going to focus a little bit on his life, but mainly on marketing. Gary built an industry around the idea that you can, pretty much sell almost anything online as long as you're passionate about it and you put in the work. And as many of you know, Gary makes a ton of content, not just content, but compelling content about how to make compelling content as well. He's got millions of followers on dozens of platforms. I asked him if he sleeps. Gary, he's adamant about this. He says he sleeps 8 hours a night. Gary, welcome to the summit. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Guy. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody who's watching.
Gary, normally I wouldn't take the time to ask you about the lemonade stand you ran as a kid. This was, I believe, in New Jersey when you were a kid. But apparently yours wasn't, it wasn't just a stand. It was an entire franchise. How did you franchise your lemonade stand as a kid?
By being so nice to my friends every other day of the week that they felt compelled that when I asked to stand behind the table that they would say yes. So I learned very early on that it wasn't bribery or money. It was that my friends liked me for all the other variable things. So when I would go in for the ask, they felt compelled or guilted into doing it. And so I had multiple kids in the neighborhood that were pretty signed up for, hey, this is your location. This is not a joke. I would actually ride a big wheels. I didn't even have an actual bike yet. The old big wheels.
Oh yeah.
And I would go around to my stands like I was Tony Soprano. It was why. I mean, it's crazy to think about DNA. Yeah. It's crazy to think about DNA. For me to be that young, 6, 7, 8, and for it to come so natural to me. I think about sports or musicians. You see those videos of Beyonce or LeBron, and you're just like, right, of course. That's me in business. We didn't film those things, but I just kind of always knew what I loved and what was interesting to me and what came natural to me and what was it. And I refined those skills in my youth, and I think that gave me a head start in what I do today.
All right, I want to push back for a second because I think that's true. I do think that you are a gifted and natural entrepreneur, just like an NBA player is a gifted player. But most of us aren't. Most of us don't have those gifts, and we have to build them up, right? I remember in our conversation, you talked about working your dad's liquor store, and you were like, Dad, you got to sell wine. And he's like, wine? You're like, yeah. And you've got to position it like this. So when people come in, and you figured out how to get people to linger and chat and then buy wine. So you had an instinct. So this may be hard for you to deconstruct this.
But let me deconstruct it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but by the time I was 15 saying that to my dad, I had done 100 baseball cards shows, and me moving around my table and understanding locations in the mall it was, yes, I agree, but it was reps, right? It was, you put the talent, natural talent.
Shooting baskets.
It's shooting baskets. Like some people are born with better hand-eye coordination, but you shoot 10,000 baskets, you're going to be a little bit better than the one who's not. And so, yeah, I think one of the things I'm fascinated by is I know right now I could be better at skiing, music, singing, tennis, and pretty much most things. Do I think I could be at a Hall of Fame level on a lot of those things? Probably not. Do I think every one of those things can be dramatically better? I do. And then the question becomes, why do people become much better at golf? Because they genuinely enjoy it. It's what they want to do for recreation. And they get better at it to me, I've always thought of that in the context of professionalism. You know, what if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or what your parents wanted you to do, or what you thought you could make the most money with the quickest? What if you kind of focused on the things that were intriguing to you, which inherently would make you put in the reps? What would that look like in a 20-year window? I still am incredibly fascinated by that thesis.
But I didn't know you sing. Do you sing really?
I can't sing for crap.
Okay, I was taken aback for a moment.
But if I did go to singing lessons, I have a funny feeling I'd be much better than I am today in 4 years. I have a funny feeling I'm not Beyonce, but I definitely think it would be better than I am today.
All right, you were very early on with your dad's liquor business. You got into Google AdWords, and in a website when nobody was doing it, and then eventually, YouTube, using YouTube as a marketing tool for Wine Library TV, which really kind of transformed you into a brand. Gary V became a brand through this, and you began to write books and talk about how people could make money on the internet, in part by making content.
Yes.
Is that still part of your message today?
Yes. I think if you read Crush It today, 13 years after I wrote it, I'm talking about influencer marketing. I'm talking about podcasts. I'm talking about everything that ended up happening. The book, when you deconstruct it, is, even when you said you could make money, it was funny how my spidey senses went. I'm like, yes, but contextualize that. Hey, back to what I just said earlier. If you're not knowledgeable about wine or jiu-jitsu or, harvesting honey, that's going to hurt you. If you're not deeply interested in the community around those interests, you're not going to be able to cultivate lifetime value. Right now, literally right before we were getting on, I'm in a Discord with 150,000 people talking about marketing, content, business, entrepreneurship. It's very hard to put in that community time and have content that hits unless that layer of making content money comes from a place where you're bringing so much value to the audience that things start to happen, right? Mm-hmm. People want to do things with you. Your audience wants to buy things from you. So it's a really interesting game of selflessness that drives selfishness. But yes, I don't think 13 years ago people realized how much democracy would be coming to content consumption, that it was not regulated or relegated to television, print, radio, NPR, ABC, and that the internet was going to be distribution. And if you found your way of communication, whether through video, audio, written word, there was going to be opportunity on the other side of it.
Gary, there are people who are attending the summit who are many start founders who are doing things from like a flower business to people who are providing services for consulting services, to people who are creating products. Do you believe that anything can be turned into an interesting content story? Do you think that if somebody cares enough about their thing, even if it might seem a little boring on the face of it, you can turn it into something interesting through content?
I think that niches are a much longer tail than people think, but I don't believe all of them have the size of macro intrigue that make it something that we would all who are listening say, oh, that's like a very lucrative opportunity.
Right.
Frisbee, right? Do I think that you can amass 150,000, 500,000, 4 million people into a group on Facebook and start a podcast? And I do. I really do. Frisbee golf, like I really, really do. And do I think, here was my biggest point, and I continue to believe this, a person who's obsessed with Frisbee golf or Frisbee or what have you, is she or he more excited about the notion of making $86,000 a year and living that lifestyle, doing Frisbee every day because they were able to get a $25,000 sponsorship from the biggest thing, Frisbee percent, and YouTube abs this and that, versus $1.30 being a director at a company that makes them miserable. That to me is the centerpiece of this argument, because if it's wine, you could build a multi-million-dollar company because there's enough interest in wine, even as a niche. If it's professional basketball, you could go on to create a 7-figure business easily for yourself. If it's the red Power Ranger, not even Power Rangers, the red Power Ranger, you know, you're now starting to look at a 5-figure monetization at scale strategy, or maybe 6 if, you know, Comic-Con this and that. So, you know, I wanted to break that down since we had time together. I do think almost everything, it's stunning what people collect, are interested in, to sit and say you can then make a career out of it. Believe it or not, I probably go way further down the long tail than most people, because I know about affiliate deals on eBay. I know that if you really grind it and work hard and reach out to certain companies, there's branding deals to be had. But obviously, if you're talking about music, there's going to be a lot more general intrigue. As you go down. If you go to Christian rock, it might even be more lucrative because it's narrow but still big enough. So those are the things I think through when I think about that question.
All right, so some of this obviously applies to creators or content creators, but what about somebody who has a product or a service that they're offering? Let's say, you know, somebody watching now offers a service in Cleveland, Ohio, that is designed to, but really wants to scale it. For anybody watching who has a business, how important, how central in your view is creating a content strategy around their business if they want to scale and grow?
For me, it's top 3 things in 2021, because I think about growth, Guy. Do I think that there's millions of businesses that are chugging along doing just fine without content? Of course I do.
Yeah.
I just know them to be true. Do I look at every one of those businesses and say to myself, if she knew that if she put $55,000 into an employee and some ads, that her top line revenue would go up by 200K, thus paying, like, I believe that. So the answer is, for me, I have no idea why somebody would leave the growth on the table in a world now where the cost of creative and ad arbitrage on Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn is so extreme that there's a land grab of opportunity. I don't know why somebody would leave that on the table. What I see is some people are philosophically just against it because they're content, which is incredible. Yeah. I'm thrilled for them. And then there's another group that tried it, failed because of lack of patience, or because they weren't educated enough of how to judge the people that were doing it for them, and have decided this doesn't work without realizing it was they that were the reason it didn't work. It's kind of like exercising for 2 weeks, not getting a 6-pack and being like, well, this doesn't work. Yeah. So that's how I would answer that question.
You know, it's interesting because we have an episode of How I Built This that actually came out today about Policy Genius, the insurance marketplace. It's like Kayak or Expedia for insurance. And Jennifer Fitzgerald, she tried to raise $1 million. She couldn't. They ended up raising under $700,000 to start this business, which today has 30 million users, but they couldn't raise a whole lot of money. It was Jennifer and her co-founder, Francois. Their third hire was a content person to write articles about the insurance industry on their website. And I said to her, how were you able to measure success in that first year? And she said, we weren't. We didn't know if anybody was reading these articles. But eventually, they started to rise up in search engine queries. And today, most people go to Policy Genius to learn about insurance. Some of them buy insurance, some of them don't. But that's been central to their strategy.
It's everything you just said is the biggest things I believe in the world. And that is intent-based marketing, because you're writing articles to win the arbitrage of SEM, where people are typing things in Google with intent, and then you show up, which I love, intent-based marketing. What I love about social media is that is more classic brand awareness marketing that used to be left for the biggest brands in the world. Coca-Cola, Disney, Delta, because the way the society worked was television, print, and radio were the places we were consuming information. The costs of full-page ads in the New York Times and running commercials on television were so extraordinary that the attention sat at the top, and that's why you got the Procter & Gamble's and the Coca-Colas and the Deltas. Now we have awareness, discovery happening in Instagram and in TikTok, and by searching words on podcast platforms, which has completely democratized the ability to brand. And so you could have something like, I'll give you a great example, the Ocean Spray viral video, right? Oh, that is amazing. The single most impactful ad in the history of Ocean Spray Cranberry, done by a man that wasn't in the company nor hired by an agent as an agency.
Right.
You know, Gorilla Glue. There are things going on now because of TikTok's virality that are just extraordinary. And most of the world has not caught up to that. People are transactional in digital marketing. So they look for the CAC and the LTV, the customer acquisition cost, the lifetime value. They're salespeople. The branding people still live in television and kind of like business school, how to build a brand, and aren't contemporary in where they do creative brand building. And so what you have is this vacuum, this incredible situation currently, Guy, in the world where very few people actually understand that you can build brand on social at very low cost. And I believe that that is where the opportunity sits today.
So Gary, if somebody watching today, and most of the attendees in our community, you know, they don't have $1 million ad budgets or marketing budgets. They can't, you know, with all due respect, they can't afford VaynerMedia, you know, which is right. You work with Fortune 500 companies, but if you were to say to somebody, look, if somebody said to you, well, Gary, how do I start? How do I create content with limited resources and limited time? Where do I even begin? What do you say?
I mean, this is a conversation I have daily. I say a couple things. I say, look, if you want to grow and you have limited resources, your actual resources, your ability to be educated and you allocating the time. When people say to me, well, I don't have time, you know, when I audit, and I do that for my best friends, my acquaintances, distant relatives, randomly, because I'm in the mood sometimes, Guy, what people realize is they waste an extraordinary amount of time every day. If you talk to somebody who has 6 employees and has a business, she or he often is micromanaging shit that they have no reason to be micromanaging. They have hour meetings that can be 15-minute meetings, and miraculously, every time I've done a CAT scan, an MRI, an audit, we have found 3 hours a day, miraculously, from people that have no time. Then what I say is, now that we found 3 a day, and that gives me 15 for the week, I want the first 2 weeks to be completely education. Give me 30 hours of education. Watch these YouTube videos, read these tutorials that are free on the internet. Google away. How do I make a LinkedIn post for a lawyer? It's fun to be on the show. How to make a podcast, how to write articles that succeed on LinkedIn. It's all there, guys. It's all there. 30 hours. Then the next 30 hours, which is now obviously the week 1 formula, the first month's formula. So the next 2 weeks, 30 hours belongs to you, 69-year-old Don, 46-year-old Shaniqua, 29-year-old Rick, 81-year-old Sally. You, the proprietor, you make content for 30 hours. Let me tell you why. Whether it's writing, whether it's recording an audio clip on your iPhone, or whether you're comfortable in video, which is smaller, but obviously high impact. You can't, as a business owner, judge when you can finally afford to hire someone or use an agency, the work, if you don't understand it. The greatest vacuum in the last decade, Guy, is that people have been hiring people to do social media work and they have no idea how to judge and jury it. They have no clue.
Yeah.
So they're like, how is this? It's just a black box. And so I believe that if you audit your days, everybody's listening right now, I don't have those 3 hours. You really do. It's stunning how much time people spend on things that they're just accustomed to doing. This is what I do. Well, couldn't you have that person do it? Like, this is what I like. And so once I get those 60 hours in that month and use that formula of 30 and 30, then you make decisions. And then, you know, what I've heard from people, and I've been doing this a long time, some people fall in love with it and they become the content producer that they never ever dreamed of. And so that's a very practical answer. Like, you have that level of control as a small business owner, and that's what I think you should do.
Gary, we talk about
and Guy,
this.
I apologize real quick. This is final thought.
Yeah, please.
Everything I just said, I did for 7 years. For 7 years before I hired anybody.
Wow.
7 years I did my own content, all of it.
Yeah. And we talk about this a little bit on the podcast, but today, I mean, you have a team that films you all the time, and that enables you to create so much content and put clips out, and you're everywhere at the same time. But I wonder, I mean, you have a massive following today, and you built that up over time, very methodically and very slowly. But if you are starting a business today, and you want to do a version of the same thing, it may not be quite the same.
Yeah, of course.
How do you advise people to create content that is meaningful and not just a bunch of noise? Because earlier you mentioned passion and devotion, but passion and devotion is one thing. How do you actually create content that's half decent?
The audience will decide, and I think if you look at it, value comes in a couple places. I think about 2 E's a lot, Guy. Expertise or escapism. So if somebody's listening right now, 2 things that have always worked to Guy's question is, do you have expertise in what you're talking about? And you have to have humility here and self-awareness. Like, you know, some people are like, I'm an expert, and really you're just an enthusiast. Do you have expertise? Or can you create escapism? Escapism comes in many shapes and forms. It's really entertainment or something that's of interest, right? For example, being funny is an incredible tool of escapism.
Yeah.
You made somebody laugh, they stopped thinking about their day. Look, one of the reasons so many people got tricked by Instagram, one of the great escapisms of Instagram early on was the visualization of the platform, which meant attractive people.
Yeah.
We're going to over-index on that platform in a different way than we saw in blogging and even YouTube and definitely podcasting. And so, you know, a lot of people got lulled into thinking they were bringing value, and they were, but it was coming in the form of you are attractive and people are gawking or escaping and looking at you as a model or as a endorphin hit from an attractive, which is amazing, which is one of the reasons it worked. But I think it requires someone saying, okay, I'm passionate about video games. How am I going to build a big Twitch channel? It's going to come from that you're epic at Fortnite and people are just watching you out of awe of your skill set, expertise, or you might just be solid, but you're so damn compelling while you're playing and you're storytelling, you're making people laugh. You've got a personality trait, charisma. You know, I tell everybody I meet in real life that just oozes charisma. I'm like, hey, have you considered this content thing? Like if you translate the way you do in this room right now to that medium, it's gonna be something that may lead to something. So I think the answer is, you know, for me, I think the reason I've been able to build to where I've been able to build to is I ended up having both without even truly understanding I had either when I started.
Yeah.
I think I took for granted how much I knew about wine because it was my cocoon when I started the show. I definitely, Guy, didn't ever think of myself as I was 30 years old when I did my first episode.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be known or have notoriety. I knew that I was a class clown and had a level of charisma that people were attracted to me, but I never anticipated me popping on video the way I ended up popping on video.
Well, to this point about charisma, right? Some people have it naturally. Some people, many people, by the way, I believe can develop charisma. Charisma can come with things like leadership or responsibility, but some people don't, they just don't have it, or they're more introverted or shy. Introverted is not the right word.
Which I think leads to podcasting and writing. I have a lot of friends and a lot of people who've sent me incredible emails that are very emotional to me because, I am so over the top, but I would argue that so much of the feedback I get are from people that are very different than me because they hear me saying what I'm about to say, which is like, look, don't force the medium. If you are incredibly awkward or non-charismatic in your own judgment and the judgment of others, this is not like a self-esteem issue, well then don't force trying to like carry a 1 hour show on video. I'll be very frank with you. I'm devastated that I'm not a better writer or have that skill set. I would love to not have like kind of the on pressure that audio and video create. And then sometimes Guy, I'll give you a great example. I'm on flights sometimes where I just have massive ideas. But because of I'm on a plane and it's not conducive to putting out a video, I wish I could bang out an incredible 16-sentence manifesto and post it on LinkedIn. It doesn't flow for me that way. My book writing is, you should see what's going on with my latest book. It's hilarious. I audio the whole thing with a ghostwriter, and now we're going through it, and it's being read back to me because I'm audio, and I'm adjusting to it, and then sometimes I'm making edits, and then the original time I just said it 2 lines later. It's like an inefficient process. So just to not be too long-winded, find your medium. If you're not incredibly charismatic, you might have the luxury of being a compelling writer. And that's okay. You don't have to be on video and audio. Writing is still crushing on the internet.
But if it sounds to me that, I think this is sort of self-evident, that if you have ambitions to scale, to create something much bigger than where you are right now, it's hard work. You have to be in all of these places or in some or many of these places.
Or I don't think of it as hard work. I genuinely think of it as fitness, right? So Seth, who's part of my team right now, came in to set up this. When he walked in, I said, Seth, you look great. He's just like in really good shape. He's always been in great shape, but I know that Seth puts in the work. Of course, he has some natural, DNA gifts. I have put in a lot of work over the last 7 years physically, and I look at my old videos and now I'm like, man, I'm really proud, but I'm not Mr. Olympia, right? And I also am now 45. If I did this at 27, it might have been interesting, but like this 45-year-old little gut is never gonna, and that's how I think about what we're talking about here. Look, you don't have to go to the Hall of Fame like Kobe and be in the gym every minute of your life. You have to find your juxtaposition. Yes, I do not talk about The Secret, AKA, and I haven't read The Secret, so I don't know, but I know how people translate it. This is not about like, if you dream it, it will come. Yeah. This is about, look, if you put in reps in the gym, you will start gaining muscle. But don't get to the place in the gym where you start hurting yourself and getting burnt out, or you go so hard in the gym for 3 months, but then you eat like crap for a month because it wasn't sustainable.
Right.
The way the gym and health and fitness is, that's how I think about business. For me, a lot of effort on work has been very easy. It is my hobby. Guy, business is my hobby.
Yep.
Business is my golf, is my skiing, is my painting. It's my hobby. I also know for a lot of people, it is not. And it's beautiful to have a 9-to-5 business that, you stay within your means of what that does. But hey, if you go 9 to 6 and you have your same talent, yes, you're going to be eking out results.
So here's my question, and this is a bit of a digression because we're talking about marketing. And I asked you a version of this in the podcast, but I'm really curious. What motivates you? If it's not, you're very wealthy. You've made a lot of smart investments. You've created huge businesses. You've sold businesses. You go to garage sales on the weekend looking for bargains. What? I love that. I love that. But what motivates you? Is it money? Is it what is it?
It's 3 things. Let's break down garage selling. So I'm living life, putting out all this marketing stuff, and I listen for all my talking. So I get a lot of DMs and emails saying, cool, Gary, but I can't put $1,000 into Netflix stock. I can't put $5,000 into YouTube ads. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to show people what I did when I was 17 to 24 to make some side money. I'm going to show them how I garage sale. So trash talk in my garage sailing was to show people, you want to start with $11? I got something for you. And let me show you how you go from 11 to 4,000 in a summer by going to town sales and by getting educated. The other part of that, so that's legacy, Guy. To answer your question, 3 things. I want legacy. I'm attracted to legacy. I'm genuinely curious, which is number 1 for me. When you said what drives you, curiosity. Mm-hmm. I'm wildly curious where I sit in my profession. I'm interested. I love sports. Sports has it epic. There's a lot of data that supports a LeBron James versus a Dominique Wilkins conversation. Mm-hmm. In business, it's a little trickier because what's interesting is my relationship with money, I'm so not about it. I understand that money scores it, right? Warren Buffett versus Oprah versus Sarah Blakely versus, I get it.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a different take with entrepreneurship. I think innovation matters. I also think how much you give back to, it's how I'm living my life. How much you give back to entrepreneurship to the game is interesting. But I am curious, how strategic am I? How much can I squeeze out of the gifts I was given? So I think curiosity, legacy, the thrill of the hunt. The best part about garage selling is you pull up to a house at 7:30 in the morning and you don't know if you're going to find a rare Nintendo game for $1. It's fun.
I've said this before. I've said it before publicly. I think curiosity is much more important than raw intelligence. I think actually people who are curious, because I think curiosity can be a developed. It's a choice. You could choose to be curious, and it's as simple as that. And it's actually much, much more important than raw intelligence, because in my experience, every founder who's been on How I Built This is a person who follows their curiosity. So I think it's a super important point. I want to ask you about a brand, and you may not have one off the top of your head, but maybe you do. What is it? Which brand right now do you think is doing marketing very well right now?
Believe it or not, we work with TikTok, Vayner, but it's not the work we're doing with them that's going to make me say TikTok. It's going to be the fact that I think Nick Tran is a very good operator as their CMO. I love what they're doing with their television commercials, using content that, it's my favorite concept. It's you're getting affirmation that human beings think this is interesting, and then you're taking it to another platform and giving it even more awareness. So I think TikTok has done a very solid job of, it's really funny. I think TikTok and Facebook, believe it or not, building awareness around groups. I'm blown away by how much under 30-year-olds are signing up for Facebook groups at scale right now. I think it's an effective marketing job by them. Elf Cosmetics, I think, has been very native to TikTok, to a demo that they need to win there. Those are some things my brain went very fast when you said that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pick non-Vayner work, as you can imagine as well. On the Vayner front, I think Pepsi and Scott's have done a really good job in accelerating with us. So, the truth is, it's always a tough question for me because unless I know the business results, I think that marketing is very good at cheering for itself in a silo without asking if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. The ad world loves to clap and celebrate itself around work that isn't actually driving business results, which I've always found fascinating.
What do you think about sort of, kind of unusual approaches to content marketing? Like I think of Steakums. Steakums? Yeah. Steakums has a Twitter account that's gotten a lot of attention because it's just the person writing the tweets is just really quirky and weighing in on all kinds of things that have nothing to do with Steakums. But you go to their website, it's actually kind of funny and interesting, and they sell T-shirts and hats, and it's I haven't thought of Steakums since the 80s.
I'm a huge fan of breaking patterns. If you think of, it's funny, I have been willing as a human being to take on a little crow, a little judgment out of my subconscious bias towards breaking patterns. I wouldn't call it shock jock, but I think, when I communicate on stage, a lot of times I look at myself and I'm like, it took me a long time. I'm like, oh, This is me being affected by Randy the Macho Man Savage and Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock. Like, I'm affected by that. And when I think about those three, they broke patterns in their craft in delivery. And I think what you're talking about with Steakums, or what Wendy's does very well, or other brands, Popeyes, is breaking patterns. I mean, it's what we did with Planters, right? We killed Mr. Peanut. That stopped everybody. No, Guy, before Vayner won the Planters business, when we started doing the work, we realized nobody cared about Mr. Peanut. That was a 1960s phenomenon.
Yeah.
So how do you break the pattern? You kill him. All of a sudden, miraculously, America really cared about it. And so, yeah, I mean, you know what else I think about? Remember when in urinals, and this is not as crass as it may sound, but remember 20 years ago in urinals, all of a sudden there was like a little bug on it? Like, how do you break patterns? Like, that's what commercials were when they first hit television. What's unusual that isn't annoying or disruptive? That's what commercials became. So yeah, I'm a big fan of marketing that is different, catches you quote unquote off guard, but values the other person's time. And that's where I think we've lost our way in marketing. A lot of marketing is disrupting people instead of catching them off guard.
The content has to be worthwhile.
It goes back to that escapism. Like, if instead of a pre-roll podcast ad, if out of nowhere, Guy, you started singing, let's use you.
I've sung
shows,
before.
But I mean the ad.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like if I came to you and said, Guy, I really want wine text to explode, and I think your audience, so would you sing?
Yeah.
I don't want to do a live read. I don't want to do a pre-roll. I don't want to do a mid-roll. I want to pay you that in the middle of an interview, out of nowhere, for no reason, you start going winetext.com. You know, like that would completely stop your entire audience. That's how my brain thinks. I think in creative ways that will completely get everybody to quote unquote pay attention, but not be something that is bothering them because they want to actually hear the rest of it. There's a level of surprise, delight, integration. It's why I fell in love with social media. It was in the feed. It wasn't like you just got, I'm watching a show and it gets to the cliffhanger, nah, crap, now I got to watch a Spindrift ad. Big shout out to Spindrift. I'm drinking one right now. It's more integrated in a different silly way. You singing a wine text ad will make people chuckle more so than when you start reading it. Hey, let's stop real quick. I got to give a shout out to one of our sponsors. It's already dead because it's intrusive instead of in addition to.
Gary, I am going to explore that, and I hope our audience watching right now will forgive me if I break out in song in the middle of your podcast episode, just in the middle of it, randomly.
I love it. I'm in.
All right, we're going to do it. Gary, I know you've got to hop.
Yes.
Thank you so much. What an amazing conversation. You know what? A lot of people, when they don't know you or they just, they say, oh, that guy. So you are so smart. You are so insightful. You're really, you're one of the smartest people, full stop, on business and entrepreneurship and all these topics. I really appreciate you. You're a great person. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on our first day of the summit. I can't wait to see all of you tomorrow for more conversations around our theme of leadership. That's happening tomorrow. You can check your summit schedule for all the details, all the great programming we're doing. Once again, thank you to our presenting sponsor, GoDaddy, and to our supporting sponsors, Dell Technologies and Bulldog Online Yoga, for making this week's summit possible. Gary, thank you again. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Get a good night's rest. See you tomorrow.